Hey there. Welcome to People Count. Let's start over again. Take two. Hey there. Welcome to People Count, a DiversIQ podcast where we talk about workforce diversity and human capital management from a data lens. DiversIQ is leading the crap. All right, one more time. It's almost like I never did voiceover. All right. Hey there. Welcome to People Count, a DiversIQ podcast where we talk about workforce diversity and human capital management from a data lens. DiversIQ is the leading provider of human capital and DEI data for the largest publicly traded companies in the world. We provide the most comprehensive data set focused on DEI, human capital, and other social factors affecting the materiality of company culture, employee retention, and inclusion. I'm Dan Berlingeri, and today I'm joined by Josh Raymer, the CEO and co-founder of DiversIQ. Hey, Josh, how you doing?
I'm good, Dan. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. Happy Friday. Today, for those who haven't heard our last podcast, tell us a little bit about yourself. Who is Josh Raymer and who's DiversIQ?
Yeah, I started my career on Wall Street. I was worked at some major investment banks for about 8 years, and I got really burned out working 90 or 100-hour weeks and every weekend, and ended up starting my own benchmarking firm covering retail and restaurant performance. And I sold it to a research firm called eMarketer back in 2013. And eMarketer was a firm that gathered a lot of disparate information about brands and marketers, about advertising and marketing, and helped brands and marketers understand where consumers were spending their time and their money and how to reach them in the digital ecosystem. And so I worked on building products there for about 8 years. And after I left there in late 2020, I reached out to my co-founder Hillary, who was the head of research there for like 20 years. We had always talked about starting a company one day together.
Mm,
We loved what we were doing and the challenges of taking all this disparate, unstructured information and helping turn it into tools and actionable insights that people could use to make better decisions. And I had been researching diversity and human capital data in the summer of 2020, which was the perfect time because this was right after George Floyd, and this was when all of these different stakeholders were demanding that companies, do more. And there was a lot of reaction, and there was all this information out there, but a lot of people didn't have the information they needed. They didn't have quality information. They didn't know what it meant. They didn't know how to use it. And so we just had this idea that, well, what if we took that same model, right? Gathering all this disparate information, vetting it to make sure it's from a trusted source, normalizing it, and then delivering it to people that needed to make decisions so that they can know that they had trusted, timely, granular information they needed, around different issues. So whether it was an HR manager or a DEI leader or a executive or a job seeker or a vendor looking to do business with a company or an investor. So that was our hypothesis, and we didn't really know about who we were going to be building for or what they were actually doing. But that's how we started DiversIQ in early 2021.
fantastic, fantastic. So you started with that intention. I mean, what was early stage like for you and Hillary? I mean, what were some of those earlier conversations like? Did you see any consistencies in the feedback?
So we started by throwing a lot of stuff against the wall. We started a newsletter where we just started pulling some data together and talking about trends and insights. And we were using survey data around sentiment, right? This was 2021, so a lot of people were working from home, and they were talking about what that looks like and how companies were
Mhm.
handling the situation. We were looking at data that was put out from trusted uh, third parties like big consulting firms that were putting out white papers on what they were seeing in terms of the boardroom and trends in governance and trends in board diversity. We were looking at a lot of what companies were saying. It was very reactionary in terms of diversity and inclusion, and in terms of what they were disclosing about their workforces. But
Mhm.
we basically just we would pick a topic and write something about it, and then see the reaction and start talking. But we did start talking to people pretty early, and we had we we were reading a lot about big investors and how they wanted better information to engage with companies and get them to be better, and then also to evaluate companies on who was doing well and who wasn't. And we just kept hearing consistently that we're not like there's not a lot of data out there, and what's out there is not granular enough. It's kind of a black box in terms of where is it coming from, how often is it being updated, how is it calculated, and so we just kept hearing that it's like data quality, timeliness, transparency. So that's kind of, that was really consistent from both large investors and kind of large professional services firms and the companies themselves that were like, what's everyone else doing, and who's doing well, and what do we do?
Yeah, yeah. So it sounds like those are some of like the main problems you were trying to solve for. Maybe not all of the ones that you set out to solve. Was there anything that surprised you that you discovered in the space?
Yeah, I guess first of all, we talked to some of the largest investors in the world, like trillion-dollar asset managers, and they were both getting a lot of this data from vendors, and they were also trying to do a lot of this in-house. And they just said, it's just like, how are you doing this? It's so hard. And we started doing it at a very small scale just to see like, how could we do it? How would we set up systems and processes to scale? But all this information is so unstructured, right? It's from all these, giant PDFs and a database over there, and a company saying this on a earnings transcript, and it's not commoditized, structured, you know, information that has to be reported. It's all voluntary reported. They describe it differently. It's reported all over the place. So they were like, "How are you doing this?" And so we were just surprised by these really, well funded, large companies that have been doing this for a long time that were struggling with trying to do it themselves. And then we were
Mm,
surprised by on the other hand, like we've been covering board diversity since we first started, just because we were like, well, we have to. It's kind of table stakes. But we're like, well, we can't compete with some of the other large vendors that are doing this. But we've been surprised by how well we've done it going against those vendors directly when we hear that our data quality, the timeliness, the the kind of insight into our methodology and how much effort we're putting into validating, for instance, how people self-identify with race and
mhm,
ethnicity,
mhm.
or even how frequently we're incorporating new information with changes, especially during proxy season. Because we heard from several at the time prospects and now clients that they went into an engagement and they said to the company, well, we want you to get more diverse on your board. Here's what we're seeing, and here's where we want to get you to get to, or here's your policy now, and we think you should implement this policy. And the company would say, well, your data's stale because that's not even accurate today. And so it was
Yikes.
really like that was one of the first things that we had success with, was really people that wanted to engage and get companies to change, and then wanted to actually have kind of real-time data. Another example is a very large company that's been in this space and doing this for a long time, was pushing S&P 100 companies to publish their EEO1 data, which
Mhm.
is their intersectional workforce data they report anonymously to the government. And at the time, when they started writing these letters, I think there were like 25 of or 20 or 25 of the S&P 100 had made it public, and they said, listen, we're having success, they're responsive, and they're saying they're going to do it, but we don't know when they actually publish it, because one of them will put out a press release and say, hey, we made our data public, and one of them will like bury it on a corporate governance page with a small link. And so
Mm,
giving them kind of like real-time insights into what's going on, and how their efforts are paying off. Or one of our clients pushed a company, Metler Toledo, this proxy season to be more transparent and to publish their EEO1. And like we caught it, and we were like, hey, just so you know, your efforts are paying off. They actually published it. And so
nice.
those are some of the things that yeah, the big challenges are, this is really resource intensive. It's really hard to know when there's
Yeah.
information, is it good information, and how do we extract that information and turn it into something that we can deliver to people that they can actually use.
Yeah, right. I'd love to hear a little bit more about this version 2 of DiversIQ. I know that we've been on the precipice here for a while of launching and announcing it. Why the revamp? What spurred that?
Yeah, I would say this is kind of version 3, because version 1 was like, I built it myself, and though I have some technical skills, I am not a developer at all. So like our first prototype, I built it, with like WordPress and
Legos?
my own, MySQL database that was hosted on a very cheap, cloud host. And version 2 was we actually went with like an enterprise grade system. But I would say version 1 was we started with coverage of 100 companies with a limited amount of data. So one big change, and it's not the platform, is that we just have a lot more coverage. We have over
Right.
1,600 companies, a lot more data. There's this platform. There's a lot behind the scenes that our clients won't see, but the framework is going to allow us to be a lot more flexible and scalable, and to make changes really quickly, and to add new features and tools much more quickly in reaction to our client needs. So this new platform has a couple of things which are in response to what our clients want. One is company profile. So going to company profile and seeing kind of a deep dive on one company, seeing visualizations to help you see trends and what's going on at one company. Kind of build your own report, where instead of us curating dashboards or you downloading a giant raw data feed, you can really say, well, I want to run this report and I want to show me all the companies that have a Black woman as the CEO, or I want to see companies that are have a big improvement in this area. So that's kind of where we're going with kind of custom reports and asking questions of the data. And then a third
Nice.
thing that we're starting to roll out is kind of custom portfolios or custom filters, where you can say like, hey, this is my portfolio, or these are the companies I care about. I want to add this as kind of a custom filter on every page. Just
Excellent.
it's features and tools, and it's just making it much easier to use and more powerful. And that's kind of what we're excited about with V2 or V3
Yeah,
as
I love it. Love it. And that sounds like that's directly answering a lot of that nimbleness that you talked about, where, some larger data vendors might not be able to be as nimble on their feet, but it sounds like that's come directly out of customer feedback, that you're implementing a lot of those changes in real time, which is great.
Yeah, and it's not just in response to feedback, it's actually in response to requests that we serve up regularly. A client will say, can you do this? I can't do it in the platform. Or even like, we'll say, if you need something done, just come to us. And we've learned a lot about what they need to be able to do. So V2 is a lot more do it yourself. We still have a long way to go, but hopefully it's a lot less them asking us, and they'll be able to do it themselves. And so it's both what they need to be able to do and what's under the hood, having the information they need. Those are the two pieces of the puzzle. But also a lot of different types of clients. I mentioned people that are doing engagement and stewardship and proxy voting. And then there's also people that, are advising large companies or companies that are benchmarking themselves, and they want to just understand, how do I compare to my peers, and who's doing well, and how do I do better. And then there's other companies that are saying, I want to understand my portfolio and how it compares to an index, and I want to figure out what's on my watch list and what's on my what should I avoid, right? So it's
Yeah.
I want
Yeah.
to see risks and opportunities. So it's really also helping different types of people do different things with the same information.
A lot of aspirations there, and a lot of great use cases. I mean, what's next for DiversIQ? What's next for the platform, for the research? What are you excited about?
Yeah, I would say where we are today is we're helping people who know what they need, and they know what they want to do with it. So it's kind of, people will say like, either I have gaps in my other in what I'm getting, or I'm not getting what I need. And then when we get them the information, they're like, okay, I'm going to plug it into my process, right? I'm going to plug it in so that I can do this better. I'm going to stop doing any of this manually internally, because you can do it for me, right? You're saving me a lot of time and effort, or you're giving me information which I didn't have, which is going to help me do more. And where we want to go is for those people that are like, I love this, I want to use it, but what do I do with it? Or I need you to help me understand what it means so that I can apply it, right? So
Mm,
it could be somebody who's like, I want to be doing engagement on this topic. I don't know what to focus on. I don't know which companies to engage with, and I don't know how to, push, with a good argument for why they should do it. Or I want to build a product. I want to allow my customers to build portfolios, customized portfolios, and based on their values or what they care about. But I also want those portfolios to be tied to to performance. And so it's really turning the data into insights and signals, and really helping different types of people understand, not just like, hey, we have all this data, but here's what matters, here's what it means. And so it could be combining all of this data and putting some sort of score or rating, so at least you can see who's doing well or not in certain areas, right? Like, so we started with a transparency score, which is really just the percentage of metrics that a company is reporting overall and in different areas, and just so who's transparent and who's not, and then who's getting better over time, and what are expectations with transparency. But in the same sense, like, who's doing really, like, who has great benefits, and how can we benchmark benefits, and then how do benefits actually matter, and what matters. So it's a little bit like bottom up, right, where we need a lot more data to start doing our own analysis. But there's been a lot of academic research tying things like Glassdoor ratings, or whether a company shows up on Glassdoor's best places to work list, or the Fortune 100 best companies to work for list, showing that those companies outperform. And that's great,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, you can use that information to build portfolios and make decisions, although at a certain point everyone has that same information. But what we're trying to do is say, like, okay, let's look at the Fortune 100 best companies to work for. The new list came out a few weeks ago, and I think it was the
Mm-hmm.
27th or 28th annual list they've published. And there's been several academic papers showing, at any time period, those companies outperform almost any index. And Jeffries just put out a piece kind of doing even deeper analysis and showing, it holds true for the latest crop of the list. And, it's interesting analysis. But what we want to know is, like, what is it about those companies that
Right.
makes them the companies that people want to work for? And, it could be self-reinforcing, where if a company's on that list once, people want to work there, and it helps them. But, also kind of like a meta analysis, right? I think we look at 8 or 9 different what we call external recognition. So is a company participating in the Bloomberg Gender Equality Index, or what's their Human Rights Campaign Corporate Equality Index score, or are they what's their rank on this best four list, or are they included on this list? And so kind of the overlap between those things, or can we kind of tease out, well, all these companies have these things in common, or the companies on this list, these seem to be the factors that help them be the companies
Mm-hmm.
that people want to work for. And so then we can say, like, okay, those things seem to really matter, and start to run analysis and start to say, well, these are the companies that are doing really well, but those are probably, like, you already know, because they're on their list. More importantly, who's going to get on that list, right? Who's gone from just
Right.
average to great, or who has a great culture and is in the top 10, and it seems to be something's happening where they're falling off. And so,
Right.
our goal is to get to a place where we can help our clients identify risks and opportunities ahead of their peers, or do it more quickly, or just help them use this information in a way that they can run their own analysis, right? And like figure it
Yep.
out on their own. And so, depending on what somebody wants to do, we have the information and we have the tools they need. Or, we can deliver the information to them so they can do it, or we have the tools so that we can help them start to understand this, and really start to figure out, what matters, how do we use this to grow our business, get
Mm.
better with our KPIs, help our clients do what they want to do.
Or end up in a Fortune 500 list.
Right. Every company is trying to get on that list, and right,
Yeah.
so they don't. It's not like the Google search, where you can kind of like tease out the algorithm and game it. It's not these. We're not looking at pay to play lists where, if you
Right.
spend enough money with Fortune, you're going to get on that list. It really is, based on the employees and other companies saying, this is the company that people, or recruiters and whatever. These are the companies that people want to work for. So, it's like, we want to include, employee reviews and ratings. We want to include
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
employee survey data. We want to include how other companies are seen by their peers. We want to include policies and what, company data. We want to include maybe supplementary data, which can help us round out, but at the end of the day, everyone's trying to understand, what does great look like, and how
Mm.
do you do it, and how do you do it effectively and efficiently, right? So, like, what does that cost, right? So how do we do it, and how do we do it so that we're not, how do we retain our clients, so we don't have a lot of turnover, so we don't have to spend on recruiting new people and training them?
Right.
How do we make sure our manufacturing facilities and warehouses are more safe, and that
Mm.
we treat our people well, so they don't miss time and get injured and have illnesses, right? So
Right.
there could be a lot of different ways to look at it, and some of it is tied to financial performance, and some of it is just, you know, you know, a competitive advantage that it's somewhere people want to work for, or they treat their people well, or they're seen
Good
as,
practice,
you
good
know,
culture.
yeah.
Yeah. Um, Thank you for this overview and for, sharing the future roadmap of DiversIQ. I'm curious, in a few words, could you just share with us what are DiversIQ's, to your mind, what are some of your core values that you feel through every rendition of this platform has stayed true to your core?
Yeah, I would say like one, we're the anti-black box. We have transparency into everything we do. We only include information that the company that is publicly available. We're not doing, including any sort of proprietary, um, you know, metrics. We are not soliciting information that's not available publicly. So it's really about, you know, the companies that are being transparent, and then transparency into our data so that everyone knows, and it's not, we're not just collecting data. It's, it's resource intensive because this stuff is hard to understand.
Yeah,
Companies use different language, there's different methodologies. And so, when a company says we have, 30% of our leaders are people of color, one company may mean like their C-suite, their top 10 people, and one company may mean like manager level and above. So
right.
we're
Whichever number looks better given the year.
yeah, so we're doing a lot of, not only, so we're pouring over all this reporting, we're gathering the information, we're, seeing this is what they're reporting or not, and then we're clarifying a lot of the information directly with the company to say, what does this mean, so that we can describe it. So when somebody looks at this data point, they know, yeah, this company has 30% people of color in their C-suite. This other
Hmm.
company that says leadership, it's actually 30% at the manager level and above, which is, that's great, but it's like 30% of their workforce is at the manager level and above. So it's giving them, it's a lot of, helping them to save the time of having to go find that themselves, and giving them the comfort that what we're doing is the way they would go about doing it, right? It's the same thing when we say, this is the board makeup of this company. It's not just like, hey, this company's board is, 30% racially and ethnically diverse, and they have two Black members and one Hispanic members. It's actually, here's the link to the validation of how we are confident that that's how these people
Mm.
self-identify. And so, it's that, it's oh, and this information was updated 2 days ago, and so that it's really timely.
So it sounds like I'm hearing transparency, reliability, timeliness,
Timeliness,
nimbleness. Yeah.
and granularity. A lot of, we're competing against vendors that cover tens of thousands of securities, and they have a lot of resources, and they can do a huge amount of, they're covering a lot more. We're very focused on diversity and human capital,
Yeah.
but we're not automation, we're not automating, and we're not using AI to say this is the data and here's what it means. We're doing that all, and we have analysts that are ensuring completeness, accuracy, and timeliness of all this information, and we're giving you insight into exactly what we've done, and allowing you to see exactly where it came from.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Very last thing. Anything that you've noticed this week that you want to highlight? The highlight or headline of the week for you?
Yeah, I saw that Ken Paxton, is that his name, the Attorney General of Texas, met with several companies who have been blacklisted from doing business with the Texas state government, because it's felt that they're discriminating against fossil fuel companies, or they're boycotting fossil fuel companies
Hmm.
because they incorporate ESG factors into their process, or like someone at their company, said something about ESG. No, it's mostly, a lot of the large uh, asset managers and advisors and investors have been, either banned from doing business with several state governments, or there's several state governments that have made it a felony to incorporate
Right.
ESG factors into your investments. I think New Hampshire was the one, and I don't want to say New Hampshire if it's not, and I'm gonna. Uh, no, I think you could like go to jail for 20 years if you're found to have been incorporating
Wow.
non-financial factors into your decision making. And then
ESG, the other boogeyman.
and then it's it's been it's interesting. Jamie Dimon just JP Morgan recently put out their annual report, and Jamie Dimon's letter to stakeholders, and he talked about, there's a whole section on community outreach and diversity, equity, inclusion. And I'm just going to read the paragraph that stands out to me. He said, we believe that companies and banks in particular must earn the trust of the communities and countries in which they operate. We believe, and we are unashamed about this, that it is our obligation to help lift up the communities and countries in which we do business. We believe that doing so enhances business and the general economic well-being of these communities and countries, and also enhances long-term shareholder value. JP Morgan Chase thrives when communities thrive. The approach is integral to what we do in great scale around the world, and it works. We are quite clear that whether our efforts are inspired by the goodness of our hearts, as philanthropy or venture type investing, or good business, we try to measure the actual outcomes. So that is the CEO of the largest, or one of the largest banks in the world, just reiterating his commitment and kind of, repeating a lot of the things he's been saying publicly.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's interesting, and it's very different from what we've been hearing or not hearing from a lot of other leaders who don't want to get involved in the fight, right?
Yeah.
We've seen some companies that have tried to stand up and say things, and it's hurt their business. And so I understand the fear and
Yeah.
the hesitation to do something like that. And oftentimes it's probably coming from legal departments, but also
Right.
we've seen companies that have done things that they probably regret at this point, and that has really hurt their business. So, I think he's in a position, and they're a company that's in a position that can do that. I think BlackRock has been very open about it in the past, and Larry Fink's
Right.
letters have often included language like that. And this latest year, he refrained from talking about it. So, there's not a lot of, I don't think there's a lot to gain for Jamie Dimon and JP Morgan there. Like,
Sure.
but I guess he feels like it's still a competitive differentiator for them, and it's important that for the communities they do business and their employees and their vendors, that he's reaffirming that commitment. And
Yeah.
it offsets the risk that they're going to lose the business of several state governments, and
Yep.
underwriting municipal bonds, and managing retirement funds in those states
Yeah.
in the long term, right? He's taking the long view. So it
That's
was
great.
it was interesting to see that.
I'm wondering if he's going to become the new poster child for ESG funds. If they're going to start to lift up his language and his voice.
Well, I think he didn't say so much about ESG, and he did talk about outcomes and about measuring success. And I think he's somebody who's talked about, we're going to try things, and if they don't work, we're going to stop doing them. And
Right.
but you know, he also was very, against Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies for a long time,
Right.
others were embracing it because they saw the riches and the gold at the end of the
Yeah.
rainbow. And I know that you know, I think he's less. His comments are less threatening about
Sure.
cryptocurrencies, but they still haven't been as active. But no, I think he's been, and he's also, what did he say? Full-throated,
Yeah.
full-throttled, red-blooded capitalist. And so, yeah,
So surprising to hear this from him doubling down on this.
yeah. So it's rare to see a leader that is reaffirming those values that openly and honestly.
That's great. That's great. Josh, thank you for your time today. That's just about the time we have. We really hope that you enjoyed today's episode. If you like this content, there's plenty more, and you can check that out on DiversIQ.com. That's DiverSIQ.com. We have blogs, articles, white papers, and webinars on topics like this. And if you join our newsletter at DiverSIQ.com/newsletter, we will send you all of those things directly once a week. Thank you so much for dialing in, and we'll talk to you next week. Josh, anything to sign off?
No, that's it, Dan. Thanks, and everyone have a great weekend.
Have a great weekend. Happy Friday.